What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Kevin Moore Show. Now on today's show I'm about to be joined by my guest Robert Lindsy Milne. Now Robert is recognized across the continent as one of the most insightful psychic intuitive counselors of his time. He's based in Toronto, Canada, and was recently featured in the book The Perfect Predator, which we'll get into later. So Robert Lindsy Milne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's really exciting. Every show is exciting. But
every show is exciting. It is. And every guest sometimes I get on, right, I'm thinking, oh, no, you know, this again. Do you know what I mean? It's like I've just got so much to do in the background right now. I'm like, I don't want to do this show. I've got so much to do. But then when I push myself to see through the commitment that I made with the person, I'm like, oh, no, this is going to be good. So everything happens for a reason, and I know that. So, okay, interesting story and how you came on this show as well. I think, you know, you've done this enough times. Let's just go very quickly into being 15 and on the streets. But prior to that, what sort of childhood did you sort of have to, you know, to be on the streets at 15?
Well, I ran away from. Actually, I was on the street at 14 for the first time, and then at about 15, I left home again. It certainly wasn't the happiest or most fulfilling home. I was a child of physical and emotional abuse, and I'm also the type of person that I really won't tolerate too much. Even as a kid, I wouldn't take too much. So I just decided that I would start life on my own and take care of myself that way. And I survived on the streets by my instincts, my wits. And, you know, throughout my life, or certainly in those days, I was always presented with an opportunity to solve a problem, like get something to eat or a place to stay. I was always presented with the option of using my intuitive psychic abilities or an illegal or an immoral way. Most of the time, almost all of the time, I chose the intuitive psychic way. But, you know, as a kid on the street, you can't always find the intuitive psychic way. Yeah, but could I also point out, though, it was like a testing ground, and it was like an apprenticeship, and it's how I really developed my skills. And with those, when I was talking about tests, when I was talking about problems, they were often moral, spiritual tests. And there was no right or wrong choice. You know, there was no good or bad, right or wrong. But based on the choices that I made to solve my issues or my problems, determined which direction my life was going in.
Yeah, because we've always got the free will there as well.
Absolutely.
We'll get into free will as well. So obviously you talk about on previous interviews that you've done a lifetime's worth of sort of counseling work, self-healing, working on yourself, giving back to yourself. How much of that childhood have you sort of healed as well, those kind of wounds?
From about 17 or 18 all the way up to right now, I've always been doing some type of personal therapy, inner growth, healing. It's been a lifetime commitment. See, the more I work on me, the better I become in me, the better work I do with my clients, with the people that I do readings for and work with. The purpose of my life, Kevin, I am fully committed to this lifestyle, although not priestly, as in like a priestly life. However, this is my life commitment. What the purpose that I was born for. This is it, and I knew it from a very young age. Specifically 9, by the way.
9 years. What was going on at 9 years old for you to self-realize that?
Well, my father and I. So I have to go back a little bit because I started doing psychic things for as far back as I can remember. 5 years old, I'd be telling people, adults, things. They would get upset at me, or yell, often hit, and then the next day, what I had spoken about the day before, in fact, happened. Nobody remembered that. So I was always confused by the way the people around me were acting to what I was saying, and I often got into trouble. One night, it was in like March 1958. It was at a Stanley Cup hockey game. I'm a Canadian. I'm from Toronto, and our team's Toronto Maple Leafs. So my dad and I were at the Stanley Cup semifinal. The game went. In the third period, the game was tied 1-1. At the beginning of just before the first overtime period, when the teams came on, I knew number 17 with Toronto Maple Leafs, Gary Eman. I knew he was going to score. The game hadn't even started. I knew it was so real; it had already happened to me. So then, anyway, when they got ready to, it was time to drop the puck at center ice. The lights in the whole building went down, and it was completely quiet. Eamon wasn't even on the ice, but to me, he had scored. So I just jumped up and started yelling and screaming even before the game started. And the entire building, like 18,000 people, turned and looked at me standing up screaming. And my dad put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Sit down." And I sat down anyway. They dropped the puck. And I looked around and I realized that nobody knew Eamon was going to score. And then a couple of minutes later, Gary Eamon jumped on the ice and a guy named Red Kelly passed the puck to him and he tipped it in the net and the entire building erupted. And I sat there looking around thinking, other people think differently. And that was when I knew I was different and that what my path was going to be. I knew what I was going to do. I was about 9.
Incredible. Okay. Obviously, many years have gone by, but a long time ago, right? But did you get a chance to, make up with the parents and heal that and actually have some closure with them?
My father is 91 years old. He just stopped working full-time in January. We meet for brunch. We've been meeting for brunch for the last 20 years. Every Sunday, we hardly miss a day. Just saw him at noon today. So yes, I've come to terms with and done a huge amount of inner healing. Which, by the way, in my work, I help other people come to that healing too. As a psychic, as an intuitive, as an empath, and someone who spent their life in every kind of therapy you can think of, I understand what people are feeling. I know what it's like, and I can describe from my experiences what I see with them. I can tune into them and show them how to heal. That's a big part of my work. It has been for a fairly long time.
So, and Mum as well. I mean, you got to have that.
I did.
Yeah, have that part with Mum as well. Okay, that's good. That's good.
And with my siblings too.
Oh, right. Okay. Yep. So they had you quite young. So everyone in that family would have been, the parents were young at the time when they had you. Yeah.
My mother had turned 18 in June, and 2 weeks later, I was born. My dad was 20 and away in the Navy.
Yep. Incredible. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because, you know.
And it was a very difficult time in my life. I wouldn't change it. I wouldn't, because those things made me into the person that I am. And at this stage of my life, I'm really digging who I am.
I guess some of us have got to get a little bit further to feel that way sometimes.
Well, that seems to happen as you get older. I've noticed.
Yeah. You know, it's like...
And I've got some good news for you, Kevin. You're going to get a lot older, just to let you know.
A lot older, yeah. I do and I don't look forward to getting older. I'm happy with being 42. I'm cool with that.
Yeah, that's a great...
Yep. But shit, man, who knows what's around the corner for any of us? Sometimes I do think we create it. Absolutely, I do think there's destiny plays a hand. Do you think sometimes as well? You've mentioned this, but I'll ask you: do you think that there's certain things that you can't read for people that are destined to happen because you're not supposed to see it,
or they're not? Okay, so my thinking on that, because I've had a few years to think about that. You know, there was one time. Can I share a story about the destiny thing? Okay, so during the peak of my career, I was appearing on several regular TV shows across the continent. One time I was doing a reading in Toronto when I was home, and it was just after the Calgary Olympics. The Calgary Winter Olympics. And this woman came to me for a reading, and I did this really fantastic. She rode her bike up to my house, and, you know, I did this really great reading for her, and then she left, and I was really thrilled, you know, with the fabulous reading. The next night, I was watching on the news that this producer that with CTV had been hit by a streetcar or something when she was riding her bike home. And then I saw the picture. It was the woman I did a reading for the day before. And I thought to myself, how could I have missed that? And where did the other shit come from? Because it didn't feel any different than any other reading. And I have walked the floors. It drove me crazy. How could I have missed it? There's been a couple others. And what I've realized is that very few things in life are predetermined. Most things are free choice and free will and decisions we make in the moment. Very, very few things are destined. So if something can be seen, it can be changed. If you could see something, if you can't see destiny, because it can't be changed. So that's how I've come to terms with it. If you can see that it can be changed, destiny can't be seen, so you can't change it.
But I guess there's also, you know, good news in destiny as well. If someone wants to say to you, oh, you know, I can see a couple of kids in your path, and you're like, forget that. Do you know what I mean? But some things that are good news destiny, right?
Yep. Well, I fixed that about 29. I made sure that didn't happen anymore. I had a vasectomy at a young age.
Yeah, well, one of my friends have had that as well. Yeah. He's had 2 kids, and he's had that now as well. Okay, so Yeah, there's destiny there. Now, you talk about that you've always lived on intuition. You're still doing that now?
Absolutely. I still work full time. I've never stopped. I just stopped. I stopped doing shows about 8, 9 years ago. But after doing a job for 50 years, which I've been doing it longer, and by the way, I've done more than 100,000 psychic connections in my career. You just don't walk away from. Well, I certainly don't. And I have a really comfortable practice here in Toronto. I just started doing shows recently.
You went back to that. Yeah, you went back.
I just started. Yeah.
Why did you stop?
Well, traveling was difficult. When I was on the shows that I did, it was the body in the studio, and if the studio was in New York, I was in New York, or whatever place. So I spent a lot of years traveling. Going to do a show was a big production. I'd travel with my secretary to the city the day before, go on the show. We would do readings throughout the week, and then go to the next place. So just doing an interview like this would have been a whole week's effort for me then. So that was. I stopped being treated respectfully. All of a sudden, I was being treated as, another one of those. I didn't like that very much. The last show that I did in mainstream, it was on the biggest radio station in Toronto, and the show that I was on, the time period was the highest rated in the country. And I was on at 9:05, and I was on till 9:50. And at 9:15, I looked at the clock and said, shit, 40 more minutes of this. God, how am I going to really? And then that was when I realized, I said, okay, well, that's it. That's a career here. This one's done. And it wasn't like bad. It was kind of a relief. And I didn't plan ever on doing shows again. But as I said, I have a really good practice. So it's not. I didn't do it to promote work.
No, I get that absolutely. And
it wasn't fun anymore.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? I suppose when it becomes as difficult as that, when it's feeling so, it's just something that you really don't want to do. Yeah, you have to really question that. But so many of us live that life every day. We don't want to do it. We hate where we are in life. We despise bloody everything, and yet we're still doing it.
I am really lucky. I am really privileged to. By the way, my dad is one of these guys. Like he worked from the time he was about 14 all the way up to 90. He says I'm the only guy he's ever met that never had a job. So because I forgot what was it that you said. So many people don't love what they do. How awful that is. I'm so it's. I'm so privileged that I found what now. It hasn't always been skyrockets and rainbows and roses. There were some pretty tough times. It wasn't like I just zoomed into doing shows and making a really good living. There was a lot of hardship and a lot of hard work and commitment and dedication. When I was around 21 years old, I made a commitment that I would do a psychic reading or practice being psychic every day of my life. Now, I did that straight for about 30 years and took a couple of days off. And then I just come back. I practice or I do something. I do a psychic reading every day.
Yeah. Yeah, practice makes perfect with this kind of stuff. And I think I see a lot of people in this field who have the gift, but really they have not gone through any kind of spiritual growth. They just refused to, or they just missed it. It's like they went straight to giving readings, but you tell them like some of the people that I've interviewed, and they're like, who are they? And I'm like, well, they're some of the top, spiritual thinkers out there, some of them, right? And have you not gone down your own sort of self-seeking journey? No, I've just kind of, been doing this all my life, and, I don't, not really, into that type of, just into doing my work. I'm like, well, but where's that growth? I don't know. Maybe that's being judgy.
Well, if you have an opinion, you've made a judgment. So judgment doesn't necessarily be negative. If you have an opinion about something, you've judged it. So we all have opinions. Some we like, some are positive, some are negative. In that spiritual psychic thing, being psychic is separate from being spiritual. It's a natural phenomenon that most mammals have. And we humans, most humans have intuition or psychic awareness, or whatever you want to call it. We almost all of us have it. So simple examples. Have you ever been sitting somewhere and then look up and see someone's looking at you? Mm-hmm. Or well, that's being intuitive. That's something. Or have you ever just been thinking about somebody and they phone? All the time. Have you made a decision and all of a sudden it changed your life, or you saved your? All the time. So we all have that intuition. We can override it. Now, that doesn't have anything to do with being spiritual. It's just that talent or that part of our brains that we mammals have, or most living creatures have. If we do work on ourselves, then so the psychic is part of mental, emotional, then there's the spiritual. And often people that do this work can go down the spiritual path. Others don't necessarily have to or do.
Maybe I've asked the wrong question there. Maybe, maybe it's not that I'm sensing that they've not gone down the spiritual path. Maybe they've just not done a lot of work on themselves. Maybe I'm seeing it from the wrong perspective.
Oh, okay. Or you're seeing it from the wrong perspective?
Oh, well, that's what I'm saying. Maybe I am. Maybe it's just, some people in this field who have the ability. And like you say, we're all born with the ability, but some people are, fantastic composers, and some people are mediocre composers.
Ah, okay. Oh, yeah. Okay. So can I give you another point of view? So, I do really good readings. I guarantee my work. So I guarantee if I do a reading for you and you don't like it, you don't have to pay me. Or if I've done a reading for you and it was a lousy reading, I'll give you back your money. That's the deal, no questions asked. And I've always been like that. I don't like giving back money, or I don't like it, but I do it because that's just the way it is. So there are people that do this work. There are so many different people in the world. There are people that'll come to me, even though I have this really good reputation, and they'll at the end of the reading think, this is crap. It happens, and it happens to everybody. But there is somebody out there that will do a really great reading for that person. And they will be more in tune with that person's values. So if I were someone who was not very spiritual, I'm not saying that I am, but I'm saying I'm really not, and I'm crass and crude and all that kind of stuff. Somebody who were prim and proper, or someone who were more formal, would not feel comfortable, regardless of how good or accurate. So then there would be somebody who would be that would be in tune with that person. And then there are people that don't believe in God or don't want to believe in God. And there are maybe some psychics that don't either. Well, they would tune into that person. So you see, there's some type of reader, psychic, for every type of person, not just one type.
Absolutely. And just going back to the intuition.
And just about every one of us, now there's a few that aren't, but just about everyone that's ever done this work really believes that they're doing a service, they're committed and doing good deeds. Just about everyone I've ever met, and a few haven't, but most.
Yes, yes. I tell you what, I'm going to ask you this question, and then I'm going to go back to intuition. So when you're tuning in then, what are you tuning into? Who are you connecting with? What are you connecting with? Hey guys, look, sorry for interrupting this interview right now. I just need less than 1 minute of your time. You may know I'm currently working on a documentary that's going to shine some light on the subject of discernment and why discernment is so important in this field. I'm working on the documentary titled Captain Mark Richards, A Murder in Camelot, and this is going to be a mini-series. It's going to investigate the many claims of the whistleblower called Mark Richards, who claims that he's a political prisoner and was framed for the murder of his friend Richard Baldwin. This is all due to the time that he spent in the secret space program. Now, Mark is the top whistleblower for the conspiracy theorist Kerry Cassidy, and she regards Mark as the most important whistleblower exposing the secret space program so far. So I've recorded 23 interviews for the documentary, but what's missing is the contribution of some key players involved with the story, and I'd like to use actors to sort of recreate some of these key players and some major plot scenes. So if you feel drawn to donate and to help, your support means the world, and the link to donate is in the description below, or just go to captainmarkrichards.com, click the banner at the top of the page, and enjoy the rest of the show, and thank you for your support.
You know, I've struggled with that for as long as I've been doing readings. I've struggled with it. There was a period in my life where I actually didn't believe in God. I didn't believe that there was a God. I believed that this is it, and all the things that I saw and all the readings that I did, it was because of me tuning into that person. That's what I thought for a while. And one of the reasons that I thought that is because if I were doing that kind of work and it wasn't from me, well, where would it be coming from? And then I thought, well, if this were like 1,000 or 2,000 years ago, I'd be kind of like a prophet. Well, wait a minute. That would mean that if I were that, because that's what the job was in those days, it's called prophet, right? So seriously, I liked that title, but that was what it's called. So if that's what I was, then that would mean that I would be doing God's work. Oh no, I am not worthy of that, and I don't want that title. So that was a struggle. And I was a little bit, I was like 16, 20, 25. So, I was also pretty cocky too. I was doing stuff in those days that very few psychics were doing, just because of the way I was trained. So I thought it was me. And then there was one time I had done a reading for somebody, and I had talked to him about what his mother-in-law really wanted. They had this big plan. They were building not a nanny suite, an in-law suite in their house. And they were doing that for her, and they were really pushing her, and they wanted her to leave her, and they were doing that, and she was giving in, but she didn't want to go. She didn't want to move, and in fact, she was getting ready to die. And there I am doing a reading for this fellow. By the way, I knew the mother. He actually, the mother was, his mother-in-law actually introduced him to me for his first reading. So I realized that she was getting ready to complete her life. And I believed that in the moment. And I told him that. And it shocked him. And because it changed all their plans, and I also told him that this special woman was dying. And I felt that it was the right thing to do when I was doing the reading. In the middle of the night, I woke up from a deep sleep, saying to myself, "How bloody dare you say such a thing to that person? Who are you to do that?" I was so upset. And I was telling my friend the next day about what I was going through. And this guy had been my friend for about 25 years. And he said, I've been hesitant to tell you this, but I've always suspected, Robert, that you were channeling. And he said, this absolutely proves it to me, that you channel. And I said, well, that's not right. That was back then. So that was the first realization that it might not be me.
That's interesting. That is. So, I mean, I've always felt that a lot of these people with mediumistic or psychic abilities are channeling a group. Some call them their angels. That's just a way, I think, to personify something that we do not understand. And we don't even understand the group analogy, but there's something, some essence, some presence of separation even in that group there is with individualism, which is really, whenever you consider everything's kind of one. So
may I share another
go ahead. Yep.
Can we go along with that? I also believe that all life on the planet is interconnected. Okay, and not just we humans, but we're all connected. Whether that be a spider, whether that be a bird, whether that be anyway, all life, we're all connected. One example of that, I was doing a reading for a woman one time, and she was just tough broad, like really tough, hard-nosed. She was the type of person, she would decide she loved you or hated you in looking at you. And if she loved you, boy, you've got a friend for life. And if she hates you, Anyway, she hadn't decided with me, and she was really tough. And as I was trying to do her reading, it was getting really difficult. It was really hard to tune into her. And I was getting very close to saying, that's enough. I can't do a reading. While I was struggling, I had a window right beside where I sat at the time, and there was this very large fly on the window, and it was getting louder and louder. And as I was struggling to tune into this woman, this fly just kept making so much noise, and it got so irritating. I turned off the tape recorder. I just said to the woman, excuse me for a moment, walked to the kitchen. I got a glass, came back into my reading room, put it over the fly on the window, slid a piece of paper under it, walked to the door, opened the door, let the fly out, came back, sat down, and I started started speaking to the woman. And she said, I would have just killed it. And as I was doing her reading, I just nodded my head. And then as I continued doing her reading, she said, I've never seen anybody do that before. And again, I just nodded my head and continued on through her reading. And right near the end, she said, I think I could do that. And I nodded my head, completed her reading and gave her tape. Now, had I killed that fly, I never would have been able to do her reading. Never. Because she changed that moment. And I really believe the energy around me, whether it was the fly or whether it was being part of the energy, it played a big role.
Well, maybe it showed that if you can have compassion for a fly, can she have compassion for herself and others? Do you know what I mean? In some way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. I mean,
she saw that I wouldn't hurt the fly. And she relaxed.
Yeah. So everything's connected. These things happen for a reason. Is your point there? And do you feel as you've got older with this? I mean, like you say, age is just a goddamn number. Who cares? But we have to use the human words for it, right? But do you feel now that you're? What is that connection? Are you able to tap into that connection for your own purpose and say, hey, can I speak to you about what is the nature of reality? What can I talk about where I'm going and what the can I ask you questions rather than it's always like one way?
I'm not quite that evolved yet, Kevin. I haven't focused so much on that. I haven't really all been interested in channeling. My work has just been doing readings, performing, and I was a pioneer in those early days. I was the first Canadian psychic to appear on radio and TV shows. The first one, first of the traveling psychics. There was one American guy that was half a generation before me. His name was Dr. David Hoy, from Paducah, Kansas, by the way. Dr. Hoy, he was. I was kind of like at first his competition. I was getting all his shows in Canada. And then he died. I never met him. I would have liked to. So I started doing shows and brought it into the forefront. So if I would have been doing that spiritual stuff and talking to spirits and talking through me, I wouldn't have gotten on another show.
No, I know.
Right? So that's what brought me, and that's how I got to where I am now.
No, I get that. What I'm saying is, for your own questioning, I mean, if you've got that sort of, if you know your readings are powerful for people and it really helps people, have you ever thought, well, what questions do I have, and why do I need to go and get my house cleaned by someone else when I've got this connection?
Okay. Okay. So without identifying spirits, say, okay, this is talking to the spirits. I do ask questions, and I often ask questions and get the answer at night in my sleep and wake up the next morning with those answers. Okay? So yes, indeed, I do that. Do I say that I have spirits? Yeah, there are spirits. Do I talk to them? Do they direct me? I guess, yeah. Do I believe in God? Yeah. And do I do things so before I do a reading, I clean the environment. I smudge the environment. Then when my client comes in, when I finish the reading, I smudge the environment again. I say a prayer to myself before I start doing the reading. And then I get into a state. It takes me a while to get focused. I get into that state. And when I do a reading, it's a monologue rather than a dialogue. And I ask the person, please don't interrupt me. I tell them. So it's a monologue rather than a dialogue. And I start off talking to them. And I say, even if you think I've made a mistake, please don't interrupt, because I'm going to go back and check it and change it anyway. If it's incorrect, I'll know. So the information comes through me. And sometimes if someone interrupts me, the channel's, the link's broken and the reading's over. So that's what happens. And the information comes through me. And there is a difference in the way I am when I'm tuning. Oh yeah. Actually, I wish I were like that all the time. The way my mind works when I'm tuning in is just glorious. It's just such a beautiful thing.
So yeah, I mean, it's possible then that you could be channeling the information.
Indeed.
But your purpose right now is not to worry about tuning into that particular essence of energy that's coming through for you. It's really just to tune into it for the clients. That's what you feel drawn to do right now.
Right now is not so much to study it.
Yep.
But to do it.
Okay. Well, you've been
and I've always been more of a doer than a studier.
Oh, we've all got absolutely. And you said at the beginning of this conversation, we all have different purposes as well. And this is you made it quite clear. This is your purpose. It's great to hear that that you feel that you're channeling it, because I think a lot of this psychic work I think a lot of things are channeled. And when I say look, these are just words, right? Even channeling is a word.
That's my point. Yes, very good one. Keep going.
No. Even channeling is just a word. For me, channeling is the ability to connect to that greater part of yourself. It's like a funnel. It's like opening that funnel wider at the bottom to allow that greater that greater whatever isness through. Right.
Okay. All right. You know what, Kevin? You've just shown me. Yes, indeed, I am a channeler. I'm not being a smart ass. No, I'm not. No, really. You've just really kind of confirmed it.
Well, I mean,
the way you presented it, I agree.
No, but some people, they'll, you know, they channel and they change their voice. They know they're connecting to a separateness to them.
Yeah,
But I think that we all are in a sense, right? But then channeling is just the word for that funnel. I mean, you could take that word out and say, you know, I mean, what this is, we don't know, do we? In a sense, I mean, we can't remember coming back from it. We can't remember going to it. I know some people have near-death experiences and they remember going back to something, and they're desperate to get back here, in a sense, to want to. Well, most of them are to want to shine that message of what the energy they felt when they went there, and that how much they can achieve down here, and what they could have done with their lives, and what they're going to turn it around to be once they've come from that kind of slap around the face of having a near-death experience to wake up. But I think, yeah, you know, to understand what this is, it's like a grain of sand on an infinite beach, isn't it? And I've come to the idea for myself, the happy space, that I don't know, and it's fine. But I do know I'm more than my body. I can't prove it. It's just it's my religion. That's my truth. That's my religion.
Yeah, we're on the same channel.
Yeah.
As it were.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to. I didn't mean a pun.
No, you didn't do anything. No.
On the same channel, though.
Yeah, we're on the same channel. Shall we say that, right?
That's why I said pardon the pun. I didn't mean to do that.
No, you didn't do nothing. You didn't do nothing. And I know there's a lot to you. I just wanted to sort of kind of explore that side of you, just to see, you know, because I know you've probably not talked about that too much, neither. People
actually almost never. Can I let me just, this is maybe one of the reasons that I had the attitude that I've had, and I'm mellowing out with that. It's not that I didn't believe in channeling. I just didn't want to do it. I found a way to do my work, and it was my way, and it works. So when I was in my mid-teens, I was doing experiments at a place called the Toronto Society for Psychical Research.
Oh, yes. Yep.
This was financed by a Canadian financier named Ben Webster, and he hired Dr. George Owen from Oxford University to head it up. And I used to participate in experiments. And one evening, and they were all people wanting to study psychic things. One evening, a fellow, the doctor there, I didn't know that he was a obstetrician, but he brought some. No, this is back in the late 1960s. He brought in some blood spots on a blotter. And he wanted me, through using psychometry, to hold the blood spots and tell the group about what I was feeling from the blood spots. There was another time, by the way, that people from the Ontario Royal Ontario Museum, they brought articles too that they did experiments with me as well. But these are the blood spots. So after completing what I was just talking about who I thought these blood spots were related to, gave all kinds of information, and then he was giving back, and everybody wrote it down, and then he was giving the feedback, and I scored pretty high. And then the intellectuals in the group started to say things like, well, how do we know that Robert's really being clairvoyant? How is it that, how can we tell? Maybe he's just being telepathic. And these fucking intellectuals were going on about that. And I just said, hey. And I went over to one guy and I said, let's just find out if you can be just telepathic. I was like 17. And I gave him the blood spot. Because it really made me angry that they were trying to identify something that they had no idea and couldn't do themselves. And I found that it was quite insulting.
And it put you off, obviously.
It did. And I stopped doing, and that nice, I've done enough of this.
I get you. But that was some time ago, wasn't it?
I was 17.
Yes. A different lifetime ago.
You're a 17-year-old, right.
Well, let's go back to 14 then. Why you even got in that situation was you was demonstrating a lot of intuitive ability. You were living on the streets. You had very little money. God knows how you even survived. I mean, you must look at that time and think, shit, I put myself in so much danger there that I was totally unaware of. And you somehow...
I never regretted a moment on the street.
No, I bet you...
And by the way, I was practicing my work on the street. I looked after street people when I was on the street.
And you were giving... eventually, you gave... I think it was tea leaf readings to people.
When I was 15 and a half, I heard that there was this tea room called the Cozy Tea Room. And if you worked there doing tea leaf readings, I couldn't though. Couldn't do tea leaf readings. I was just tuning into people. So if you worked there in the afternoon, you'd get a cup of tea, a sandwich, some cookies, and you get paid at the end of the shift. And if you worked the night shift, you'd get a hot meal. Wow, I hadn't had one of those. Cookies and a cup of tea and paid. So I applied there and did a tea leaf reading for the owner, and she hired me. And that day, I got a sandwich because I worked in the afternoon, and I did the night shift. I got paid. I had enough money to have a place to stay, and the next day I had a job to go to. And I went to that tea room. I worked there 5-6 days a week until I was about 20 or 21. And there were some days where I'd see or speak to 30 plus people, some days 10. It was like that. And so by the time I was 20, I'd done thousands of readings.
Yeah, talk about a sure way of having lots of experience and practice doing it. Yeah.
And then there were some weeks where I'd work 7 days a week because there was this old guy there that worked there. He was a star. I always thought I was better than him, but he was a star, and he really was. Like people made a living off of the readings he couldn't do. There were so many people that wanted to see him. I was one of them at the beginning. He would get these private sessions where we'd do parties on Sundays, and he would bring me along. So some weeks I'd work 7 days a week.
So what we're going to do, we're going to put the book that you're part of on the screen as well. Okay. And yes, your website is rlmreadsyou.com. Okay. rlmreadsyou.com. Okay, well, that's been coming up on the screen. It will continue to come up on the screen, and it's in the description of this video below. So I just want to say, obviously, we're going to get into how you got into that book as well, because it's a fascinating story. But just staying on what you've learned as well, and what you've gained from this incredible journey that you've been on. We're all on, in a sense. We're all got our own unique story. Now, you obviously talk about intuition, and I think it's a big thing that, you've probably spoken to a lot of people who are lost about where they are. But can you make a decision, and basically you would know if you make a decision and shit, I'm not sure, or I just don't know which way to go, but you at least make a decision, and you made a decision, yet it turns out not to be the best path. And some people have said to me before, damn it, Kev, I chose my intuition and it really messed up. And I'm like, hang on a minute, that was the path you were supposed to go on, probably. That's what you were supposed to have experienced. You chose the right one, but it is an easier path by listening to the intuition, but sometimes we don't. So that we can listen to it and it can go wrong, and we don't, and it still goes wrong, right?
Yes. Are you talking about individually, personally, or
Yep.
are you talking about, well, I've survived by my instincts, which is, why I made it out of the streets without committing any crimes or I made it off the streets that way. So my intuition and I'm lucky. I'm protected. I always feel that I'm protected. When there are times when my instincts are telling me something and I ignore it, and it almost always comes back to haunt me.
Yeah. I, I've done well. I'm doing it. I've done it. You know, I've been guilty of doing it. But even when you make the wrong decision, you know, you thought you were trying to choose the best out of whatever options you had. Do you know what I mean? And it's difficult. It's difficult. But you know,
can I share my way of thinking? So I see the purpose of this life on this planet. The purpose is to experience. And with experience, and by the way, the purpose of life is to experience all things on all levels. So what we learn one way, we must do equally the opposite. So in order for us to know joy, we need to know sorrow. In order for us to be successful, we also have to know failure. So we need to, in order to know something, we need to see it from all sides. So when we do something that brings us joy and happiness, we will experience the opposite. It's not karma, it's how we understand things. And then if we do something or something happens to us that is a negative thing, then we will experience the opposite. Because that's also, karma is neither reward nor punishment. Karma is simply for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if we make a mistake, if it's a mistake, we learn, and then we do the opposite, and vice versa. That's how I see things.
Maybe it's there some things that you feel that are been the most horrific, challenging situations, and everyone's goes through that. The experience of that is different, but it is there to teach you something about yourself, what you do and don't want.
Absolutely.
And guess what? If you go against it again, hello again, you know, that situation is going to repeat in a different way.
Absolutely.
But what you just said there is what one of my friends channeled once. He said, you know, there are no mistakes, just experiences.
Absolutely. And we have free choice and free will to experience anything that we want. However, the only rule with that is what you do one way, you have to do the opposite. And we all do. Can I share with you an interesting experience of doing the opposite? This is a silly one. So a couple of weeks ago, a friend of mine was sick, and his girlfriend had some medicine that he left at his place. So I went to the condo to pick it up. So we're all wearing masks here. So I'm standing inside waiting for the elevator. And there is this very, very tall, like over 6 feet. I thought at first was a woman. Maybe it was a man because she was so tall, and she had really big hands, and but she was very feminine. Anyway, I started speaking to her, saying we're waiting for the elevator. So we get on, had this really nice connection, and she was going to the penthouse, and she reached up and just touched it. Now I'm only like 5'6", so I couldn't have reached it. And I talked to her about reaching the penthouse. All right, so now I get the medicine from my friend. Now I go to my friend's condo. I'm standing there in an elevator just before, and this woman comes up, and she's barely 4'6" to get on the elevator. We both get on the elevator together, and I spoke with her, and she was reaching to get to the penthouse, and she couldn't reach it. So I said, oh, yeah, I understand what that feels like, and I pressed the penthouse button for her. That was 15 minutes apart. The giant woman and the short, really tall. That was the same experience. It was really profound. I thought, wow, that was cool. The same conversation, too.
Yeah, and you could take that in so many. I mean, that was just a mild experience, just like that. But yeah, I mean,
could have been my spirit saying, "Hey, Robert, here's a funny one for you."
Yeah, I
this one for Kevin. Maybe that's what it's about.
Yeah, well, I think sometimes spirit wants us to have a laugh. Do you know what I mean? We can be a bit over serious with this material sometimes, and I try to remind myself of that as well. So so when you give a reading to someone, you do things a little bit differently as well. Will you explain how it works, and then we'll go from there.
What do you mean? Do I do it? Well, so
Well, you do this kind of life review reading in a sense where you're going all the way to when they're going to end.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, yes. All right. So, what I do. Well, I do some interesting things. I find it fascinating, the way I'm doing stuff at this time. So, when I do a reading for someone, I often see their life from conception to completion. I often do. I very seldom talk about the completion. I very seldom do. And usually, if I think there's an amount of years ahead of somebody, I always add on more than what I think, because I don't want to be influencing people's decisions. So I see that. But mainly, and by the way, I go back and forth in time throughout the session. It's not like, so I talk about one thing and then I'll carry it back into the past or carry it into the future as well, and go back and forth. Every reading I do, I start off by saying the date. Oh, what I also do is I ask the person two questions. The only two questions I ask when I'm doing the reading: how old are you now? What month is your next birthday? Not any dates. I just need to know how old that person is right now and when their next birthday is. Because I measure people's years from birthday to birthday rather than January to December. And when I ask somebody their age, what I'm doing is finding out where they are in time, not where I'm guessing they are. Like I thought you could have been like around 37 or 38 or something like that. I'm not a very good guesser of age.
Yeah, 42. Yeah.
Yeah. And if I thought you were 36 and I was doing a reading, and I'd be focusing on all the stuff that would be going on around 36, 38, 7, 38, be interesting, but not that valuable for your life. That's why you wouldn't be consulting me for that. So I start off giving the date, your name, my name in Toronto. I ask the person's age. And then when I ask the person's age, I stop the tape, ask their age, turn it back on, and I start off with, here we are today in September 2020. And I often talk about a little bit about the past, a little bit about the future at the beginning, just to let that person know that whatever it is that they're going through, they're going to get through it. And then when I identify what they're going through, what I also often do is go forward in time to when they're in their mid-80s. And I look at their life through their eyes at mid-80s and describe to them today how they're feeling about what happened to them and how they handled the problem. And then I go on to talk about, I just started doing it. It was only maybe 6-7 years ago that I started doing it like that. And it's really fabulous to show somebody, and I'll describe to them, because I haven't necessarily talked about it in the I've done the reading. When I go into the future, when I describe to them what they're feeling today and how they handled it, and their faces relax and they feel. I get choked up. I get choked up when I see that. I usually don't get emotional when I'm doing readings, but when I think about it, because I've gone through difficulties and I've been taken care of in terms of the people in my field. There was this one astrologer, Elizabeth Tessier. She was much older than me. She told me that in my chart, it was one of the few real psychic charts she'd seen. And when I was in trouble, she always helped me and guided me. And there was this one time I went to her, and I thought my life was over. I thought I was done. And I remember when I saw her, and she did that reading for me. When I was leaving, and I was walking down the street, I felt so relieved and so happy. And I thought, that's what I want to do for people. You know, they come to me and they're broken hearted, and when they leave, they see a future. Kevin, it is glorious. And I feel overwhelmed sometimes when I think about it.
When you do the reading to the client, you're tuning into that client's future aspect, future self, right? You're going to the future part of their life. Does that future part of that person's life ever talk back to you and say, hey, you know, when you're doing the reading, this, you know, I'm that future aspect, but if only she or he had, you know, done certain things different, we could have, you know, I would have ended up in a different place. Do you know what I mean? Has there ever been?
Okay. I usually don't have conversations. The information comes through me and I give it. So I usually don't ask questions. The information comes through. So what I'm looking for, fascinating. Thank you for this. What I'm looking for when I'm doing that person's reading in that moment is not guiding them in any particular way. What I'm doing for them is showing them they're going to survive. They're going to make it. That's what I focus on. However, after that's part of their reading, when I get into that heavy stuff, then I go to the next part and talk to them about the next phase of their life. And I cover that. But once again, I'm going forward and backward and forward and backwards throughout their life. I thought that part's fascinating. And I just go and I follow the energy and I follow I follow the flow. And when I'm and then what happens is then the energy stops and I go in a different direction.
Fascinating. It
Sorry,
really is.
I keep
Yeah.
cutting.
No,
Sorry, I keep.
No, we're both excited to talk to each other. No, it's fascinating. It is. I'm
really liking the way I really appreciate the way you're asking questions. It's challenging me. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I think it's just, you know, you do it so differently, and I guess, you know, nothing's set in stone, is it? That's the thing. You know, you may be giving these readings, but they, as a client, have the ability to change that, don't we?
Absolutely. And I almost never give an absolute statement. Almost never. There's always free choice and always free will. When I do a reading for somebody, and what I would love, everybody, you know, I wish that everybody that comes to me, I give them happy news. I really, you know, that would be wonderful. And that's what I want. I want everybody to be happy. I want everybody to think they have the most wonderful, happy reading they've ever experienced. That's what I want. Well, that's irrelevant what I want. And sometimes people's lives, they need to experience things that I wouldn't like, or things that I would think would be sad. It's not for me to tell them that. It's not for me to tell them what's good or bad. However, what I do is I say, if you do this, doing this, this is what you're going to get. However, if you do this, this is how it turns out. You have that choice. And I would say, if you want to be happy, I'd choose that one, but.
Yeah, and I bet it's amazing the amount of clients that you've said that to. If you want to be happy, I'd choose that one, right? But they don't. They go, I'll take the hardest path, please, the harder one.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. By the way, I've done that a few times myself.
Oh, we all have. Oh my God, I am so guilty of that. And it's the kick up the. I don't know if it's even the kick up the arse. It's the soul destroying lesson that you need. But everything in is perfect, right?
Another way to look at it, it's soul building.
Oh, yeah, I know. But it feels soul destroying at the time, doesn't it? Yeah. Soul building. Yeah, that's right. You know, you can cope with it. You can become a better person, and there, you do know what you really want. You do know purpose. Yeah, you do. So, obviously, you've dealt with some really interesting cases. and interesting people. And I know that obviously we've been putting this book on the screen, and let's just talk about that part of your work as well, because obviously that's partly why we got you on today, to talk about that. So you had a client, Stephanie. Have a client. Let's say that.
And I can use her name because she's written a book. Her name is Stephanie Strathdy. Stephanie has a PhD in epidemiology. She is a professor at a Southern California university and an associate dean of epidemiology at that university. And Stephanie's husband, Tom, is a professor of psychology, has a PhD, and he is a professor at that university and also an associate dean. These people are like high-end people. I did a first reading for Stephanie when she just completed her PhD in Toronto. She had just completed her doctorate. And I had done a reading for her. And since that time, she's come back to me for readings over the years. And she kept contact. And then I started doing readings for her husband, Tom, as well. So in 2000, I guess it was 14. Now Tom is a big guy, about 6'5", and was quite the Indiana Jones kind of guy. I didn't know that. By the way, when I do a reading for somebody, I really don't know them. What I do is I see a snapshot of where they're at this time. So I may not know what kind of house they live in or what kind of car, or even know what their personality is in everyday life. I just know them by when I'm connecting with them. So I didn't know that much about Tom and Stephanie other than my work and, small conversation. So I was doing a reading for Tom, and he didn't much believe in psychics at first. And so 2014, and Tom had ballooned up to over 300 pounds. And I said to him, in the next couple of years, I think it was by the time you're 7, I told him an age. Over the next couple of years, you'll be losing 100 pounds. I see that very clearly. However, before that time, there is a really serious illness forming in your abdomen and you really need to get to a doctor. You really need to do this. This was in 2014, and I said, you're going to, if you don't get help, you're going to get sick, and you will be as close to death as you can be without and not die. Yet you'll survive and lose 100+ pounds. And then I said, Tom, I'm wondering, because I see the weight loss after the illness, I'm wondering if your destiny is the illness. Sorry, your destiny is to lose 100 pounds. So if that's the case, let this scare the hell out of you. Lose 100 pounds, and maybe you'll miss the illness. And then I said, Tom, and I really said this, Tom, it's up to you. You can do this the easy way. You can do it the hard way. And it scared him for a little bit, and then he didn't pay attention. And then him and Stephanie were away on their dream vacation. I think it was 2016 or 2015. They stopped off in Egypt. Tom got sick with something wrong with his pancreas or his abdomen, And while he was really sick in Egypt, he caught a superbug. And the superbug was 100% antibiotic resistant. That means you get that superbug, you die. That's what it means. He was medevaced to Germany, and Stephanie was there too. And this is all in the book. Anyway, Stephanie. So Stephanie decided that she was going to find a cure. Now, when Tom got sick, she contacted me, and I had permission to have a mental link with her. And because Tom was unconscious, she was his guardian. So she gave me permission to be able to tune into him. And I was connected to him, a mind link, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And not only was I connected to him in a mind link, he was receiving energy from me all the time, 24 hours a day. It was kind of like a human IV. Stephanie um, decided that she wasn't going to let her husband die, and she was going to find the cure. And by the way, I'm not the star of the show. I'm talking like that. Had I not been doing the job that I did, Tom wouldn't have lived. But my part, although it kept him alive, everybody else did more, because there were scientists from around the world that participated in this project, and everybody near the end, everybody believed Tom was going to die. I never believed it. So I knew what was going on with Tom 24/7. I knew when his vital signs were down. I knew when he was having problems hanging on. I knew when he was cold. I knew when he was lost. I knew when he was in trouble. And there was one time, and the way that I knew this is I visualized a candle, and when the flame was strong, that was his life force. I knew that he was okay, even though he's like really sick. And when the candle would flicker, that would mean to me that he was getting into trouble, and he was losing his life force. And there was one time where it looked like the candle was going out, and I told Stephanie, and he was really sick too. He was really and I said, Tom is in isolation. He doesn't understand where he lives, where he is. He's cold. He's sick. And he's letting go. And Stephanie said, well, would it be good if his daughters come over to Germany or from California? And I said, yesterday would have been a good day. Today is a good day. Tomorrow's not so good. And if you wait till then, don't bother the next day. And that day, his daughters showed up, and they connected, and his vital signs changed. And later on, now Tom didn't know at the time that I had that mental link, but Tom writes in the book about how he was lost, how he was letting go, how he was cold and he was giving up, and then his daughter showed up and it pulled him back, and he writes about that in the book. And he was getting ready to let go. He was getting ready to die, and had they not been there, he would have.
Does he remember then the mind-to-mind connection?
He doesn't fully remember that. He doesn't. He wasn't aware of it. There were just so many people there. There were just so many people coming in and out, and so many things going on. He didn't know. He didn't understand.
Fair enough. I just wanted to ask you that. Yeah. So, obviously, Tom's living his life now, and
he survived.
He survived. How does Tom look back at this part of his life and reflect on?
It's 100 pounds lighter.
100 pound lighter. Yeah.
More. No, actually, do you know what? I hadn't talked to him the whole time that he was actually in a coma, and I didn't even see him until he was out of the hospital, so everything was fine. So it had been a long time. And the very first thing I said to him is, I said, Tom, I know an easier way to lose 100 pounds. And we both laughed, of course, you know.
But what does he reflect back on now? I mean, in the book, how does he reflect back on what that lesson was there to teach him, do you think?
I've never had that deep conversation with him.
Yeah. I just wondered, that's all, you know.
And I was just thinking, because I was talking to Stephanie the other day, and one of the things I realized is that when I talk to Stephanie, Tom is always in the background, but I've never actually sat down or talked with him about what went on or our experience.
Do you think he was speaking to his oversoul or some other aspect of him that we all have, even when you do tune in, you're tuning into someone's greater part of them that in this physical reality it's just not there, but in some other aspect it is?
I don't know what he would have been thinking, but if I were to speculate, yes. Because it wasn't just me sending the healing vibes. You know, I'm not the savior. What I did is just kept him alive until the other people could cure the illness.
Yeah, and that's all documented in the book as well. You're in the book a number of times. Yeah.
27 times, I think, 26 times.
Great.
I actually haven't fully read the book.
Well, I never got a chance to read the book neither. I've just been so busy with another docu-series that I'm working on.
It's a fascinating story.
I can imagine it is. It does look, I mean, it sells me on the cover straight away. Do you know what I mean? But just the way what you've explained there and how you've explained it, yeah, I can imagine it's a really.
Would you like to hear about the cure she found?
Yes, go ahead.
So, by the way, Stephanie is a world-renowned epidemiologist, but she specialized in HIV. When she was going through this crisis, I said to her, "You have experienced every type of difficulty in your field that's your destiny to experience. Not every specific detail, but every type of problem. And you have experienced something like this many times before. And you have the skills, experience, and knowledge to find the cure, find an answer." And because she was frozen at that point. And then she decided that she would. So she did this big search. And as I said, it was from around the world. And she narrowed it down to 3 different ones. And of course, she had 1,000 advisors, scientists. Well, not maybe 1,000, but lots. And then she brought it to me and she said, I've narrowed it down to 3. And she started to tell me. She told me the first one, this is called phages, and she started to speak to me about it. And I said, that one. And she said, yeah, well, let me tell you about the other 2. And I said, no, the first one. And then she said, let me tell you about the other 2. And I humored her, and she told me the next 2. And I said, okay, now that one, phages. And then I told her why. Phages, what they were going to do, if she used it, the phages would go after the superbug and attack the superbug and eat it. The phages would do that. That's what I saw, like little Pac-Man. And Stephanie made her final choice on that because that's exactly what it does. It literally goes after the superbug and eats it. Phages comes from sewer water. It's excrement. And there were studies in Russia in the 1920s and 30s, where they were injecting like raw stool into people with lower organ issues. And the thought was the healthy bacteria eats the unhealthy bacteria. They were having some success, and then penicillin came along, and that was the end of the treatment. That was the end of those studies until, a few years ago. Stephanie found it. She found laboratories around the world that were doing research on it. The American Navy, by the way, was doing research on phages, and the American Army. And several different labs donated their phages. And Tom was the first human being ever to be injected with phages. And the second level of the treatment was IV, stuck it right in his veins. And the doctors didn't know if when they gave it to him would he live or die. However, at the time he was so sick, he would have died. And when the phages, like he got, they were wondering, like, we're going to inject him and the guy's going to die right in front of us. And he didn't. And then like a few hours later, his vital signs got stronger. And went, wow. And the world changed. And people now have been treated with phages for many different things. But more importantly than that, the concept of putting something like a virus to go after a bacteria, and then the virus dies inside. I saw that what this could do is you could alter it and send to cancer cells, any types of illness, and they're doing research on that now too.
Yeah, and just okay. Thank you for that, because I know we've got limited time right now. And just when talking about cancer as well, an illness in a sense, people can still get a reading with you, can't they? You do readings for all variations of types of issues
Absolutely.
that people have. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Although I do my best to stay away from the medical stuff because I don't know that much about it. But with the confidence, with Stephanie, the other thing that was glorious is that every day she reviewed what I said to her the day before. We met every day for several months, and she reviewed the information that I gave her. So I was getting critiqued every day. So I knew when I was right or when I was wrong. It was an amazing gift to me.
And you can't get everything right.
As that's correct. I didn't miss the big ones though, the big stuff.
Do you find that when you do get some things wrong, that maybe either you're getting in the way somewhere, or some part of you is that we have to try to keep in check when we're doing this work, or for some reason, whatever reason it may be, that's more than you can understand. It's not because you're not tuning in right, but that's the information that's coming through, and that's what they need to hear.
Okay, so I have, if you don't mind, I have another way to look at it, if you wish. So if you channel whatever, so when someone's channeling, an entity or entities are using that medium's body, and I'm not a medium, so I'm not, okay, so I understand. So they're using that medium's body. In using that medium's body, sometimes they're restricted to what's the way that medium's brain works, and can be affected by the limitations of that being, because it comes through, right? If the medium had never heard of a widget, in a conscious state, there's nothing in the mind where the spirit could compare it to, so that would speak through the medium's body. So sometimes when things are off, it's because of the lack of experience. There's nothing to compare it to. So I was seeing things that I'd never seen before. So I was aware of that concept. So I just would describe them without trying to label them.
Do you think that your gift is not just,
I don't think so much it's a gift. There are a lot of gifted people around doing nothing. The reason that I've done what I've done is I've worked my ass off. It's been a lifetime commitment, and I've sacrificed a lot. It's no regret, none whatsoever. I do it all over again. It's glorious. It's beautiful. It's been tough times. Glorious and beautiful. I have a talent. I have an ability, and I dedicated myself to getting it to be as good as I possibly can.
Absolutely. But thank you for that, right? That, just adding that, I think that's important. You put it's been your life, you put the time into it. Do you know what I mean? And you want to make sure people know that, it's come at a cost, hasn't it? Sometimes the work we do when we.
It's not free. See, gift isn't free. If I do have a gift, it's my determination to keep going, to keep developing, even when it was difficult to do. I don't lie to my clients, to my conscious awareness, my knowledge, okay? I won't answer something, or I'll change the subject. This woman came to me for a reading because she couldn't get pregnant. And about 5 years before that, when she was single, she got pregnant and had an abortion. And from that time onward, she was barren. She could not get pregnant. And even her and her husband had in vitro fertilization, could not get pregnant. And then she talked about an abortion, and she said that she believed that God was punishing her for killing her baby, and making sure that she would never have another one. That was her punishment. And I said to her, I'm really sorry that you had an abortion, because if you would have waited a couple of weeks, you would have had a miscarriage.
Wow.
Just as the information that I felt with Tom, or other times where you could say it was a spirit, I had the exact same feeling. But my brain, I can't tell you if that was what spoke through me or that I just said it. But that's the way it is when I do readings. I just say it.
Okay, but karmically then, how was she blocking herself? How was she blocking herself having the for the pregnancy then?
I don't know, but a year later I heard from her, and her husband had a baby.
So do you think that you were the kind of permission key to allow her to forgive herself then?
Maybe.
Okay.
So there was a decision I made on the job in the moment. I don't believe I lied. I don't believe I made it up. I just don't know where the hell it came from.
Well, as we said in this interview, you know, you're bringing it through that greater part of yourself sometimes, and you're not really here to question that, really. You're just here to do what you've been doing, and you've made that quite aware to yourself and others. So, but going back just very quickly on this last part, the murder, you know, do you think some souls don't are hanging around or get called back or want to come back to put something right that hasn't been put right sometimes, and it happens? Do you think there's
everything or anything is possible? I haven't gone that far in that direction. You know, my work has been the person in front of me. I do whatever I can do.
Would you mind if I asked you a question, like a tune-in question?
Please.
I'm doing a true crime docuseries, and I got obsessed a little bit with this. I wanted to show the truth. There's a guy called Richard Alexander Baldwin. He was 39 years old when he was bludgeoned to death by a screwdriver, a baseball bat, and a knife at his classic car restoration shop in 1982 at the hands of a guy called Crossan Hoover.
Where was it done?
San Rafael, Marin County. And I'm
sorry, in the UK?
In Marin County. Marin County in San Rafael, just outside of San Francisco, yeah. And,
okay.
And I mean, Crossan Hoover from the day one admitted to doing it. You know, he was manipulated by this master manipulator called Mark Richards, who was 29, who had Crossy and some other boys working for him, and he wanted Baldwin gone, and Baldwin had money, and Mark wanted the money, and that's what they put both Crossy and Mark away from. I mean, you know, I spoke to Crossy, and you know, Crossy's very sorry for what he did as a boy at 17. It's 38 years later, he's still in prison. Mark's in prison, but as well, and won't admit to the murder even 38 years later. But you know, it's almost like, you know, I felt that presence of, not so much, I can't explain it, but almost like a push by something other than me to want to do this. Do you know what I mean? And it's almost like that tapping on the door or something. But I've never heard a voice, but I just know there's something, and I'm thinking, I wonder if that's something from him. Also, I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe I'm making it all up.
Killed or the guy that did the killing?
Say again.
Are you talking about the guy that got killed?
The guy that got killed. The guy that got killed, Richard Baldwin. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the balancing of karma. Those three, because you mentioned three people: the guy that got killed, the guy that did the killing, and the guy that was right. The three of them. That's a karmic thing, and these three entities on about these three entities on about 4 different occasions had similar 4 different lives had similar carryings on, as it were. This was balancing energies.
Wow. That's interesting. And do you think that a lot of things that happen in this world are balancing energies? Sometimes we may not be able to work out how.
I believe that.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can talk for 100 years. So I think, although I could be wrong, I think that we kind of belong to spiritual pods, and that a group of entities together are from a pod, and we have incarnations all together. So it's kind of like a traveling road show, an ensemble. So in one town, we're playing Macbeth, in the next town, so each one has a different part. And then so when we're playing the part, we live that role. And then when the show's over, then we have we go back to our regular personality and go to the next town. Well, that's kind of like how I see reincarnation. In that we have these physical incarnations, and then we go back to the pod, heaven, the mother base, the mothership, whatever you want to call it, that group. And then there's a different personality. And then we'll talk about and deal with those experiences and recreate them again in other experiences. That's kind of like how I see it. And then and then there could be alternate realities as well. And that is what they say. What they say about that's another story. So,
wow, that's deep in it, because then those alternate realities are influencing this one then as well, in some respects.
Absolutely.
And I guess those decisions that influence them, how much did you come from love from any decision you made, I suppose, and maybe the more you come from love, the more that resonates to the others to do the same, maybe, and the more the less you.
I just had to throw that out too.
No. Thank you for confusing it.
Just wanted to do that one.
Yeah. It's so much more confusing. You couldn't resist that. No, but I do feel that this Baldwin character, and I don't want you to disrespect him calling him that, but Baldwin, I do feel that karmically there's something going on between me and him, and I might want to just be making that up, or maybe I don't know. I can't explain it. I just can't explain it, and I don't need. Maybe I don't.
How about this one? During the First World War, you watched him do some really awful things to innocent people. And I'm sorry, not you. The experience or life that you were living. It's not Kevin, right? It's not right. Killed Baldwin, shot him.
You mean some aspect of myself did?
In another incarnation.
Yes. So this is,
and it wasn't Baldwin, and it wasn't Moore. It was another incarnation.
Yes. So we're replaying out the idea of me helping him in this one.
Yep.
Paying it back. Okay. Isn't it?
I see it as balancing. As opposed to paying.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm paying. I mean, I could walk away any time, and I don't feel that it would. Yeah,
that's right. But it's balancing the experience.
I choose not to. I mean, yeah. It's fun. Wow. Because I've even been to his grave. Do you know what I mean? And laid some flowers there. And so
you actually shot him right in the back of the head.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Now that wasn't you. It was your essence taking on a character in that existence, but not Kevin.
Well, thank you for sharing that idea. Again, I'll take that with me on my journey, and I thank you very, very much. Sure. Just remind us of your website one more time.
rlmreadsyou.com.
Okay. Well, that's been coming up on the screen below. Is there any final message you might like to leave us with? Is there an important message you think you should share with us?
I posted something on my Facebook page, and by the way, it's open to the public. It is just love everybody. I'll sort it out later. God. Signed, God. How about that one? Okay.
It's difficult. You left me there with the hardest message to hear. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. It's very difficult to do that sometimes, especially when there's so many so much emotion involved in certain things. But yes, we hear you. Thank you. So I would just say, Robert, just thank you so much for joining us again. I look forward to having you back on.
Anytime you want me. I love the way you interview. Thank you very much.